This is our final case study on on placing a dual chamber cardiac pacemaker and leads. The scenario is to manage the patient's sick sinus syndrome. A permanent dual pacemaker with atrial and ventricular leads was implanted. An incision was made into the left chest wall with the dual chamber pacemaker being placed in the subcutaneous pocket. Next, a small incision was made into the skin and the leads were percutaneously passed into the right ventricle and right atrium. So I've highlighted a few words in here that will help us with coding this scenario. And right here, permanent dual chamber pacemaker with atrial and ventricular leads. So we've got three different things going into the body. We have a pacemaker, and we have two different leads, one going into the atrial and one going into the ventricle. And then also to be note is, I didn't highlight this, but the incision was made. So the permanent dual chamber pacemaker, that's going to be an open approach. And in small incision will be percutaneous. And the leads were, and it says it right here, percutaneously passed into the right ventricle and right atrium. I've got an image here to help us visualize how this goes. So here's where the pacemaker got put, and then they made a small incision to run this lead into the through the vein and into, and this is single, we're going to go to the dual here, into the right atrium and the right ventricle. So let's go over to the three. So these are the three codes we need to find. Insertion of the pacemaker and the two different devices, and device into the atrium and device into the ventricle. So let's go over to the 3M encoder and code these. Okay, so we start with insertion of device in, and this is going to be subcutaneous tissue and fascia, and it went into the chest. So that's for the pacemaker. It was an open approach, and it was a dual chamber pacemaker and no qualifier. So for the insertion of the pacemaker generator, it's OJH606Z. Now let's go for insertion of device into the atrium and atrium. And it's the right side that it was put into. So that starts off with O2H6. This is percutaneous, and it's a lead, a cardiac lead pacemaker, no qualifier. It's almost the same thing here. If we go back, this is a little trick I learned. You go back, take off atrium and go for left for the right ventricle, and then follow it across as well. So for the ventricle, it's O2HK3JZ. So here's a recap of the three codes we found. The insertion of the device in the subcutaneous tissue chest for that pacemaker is OJH606Z. The insertion of the device in the atrium is O2H63JZ. And the insertion of the device into the ventricle is O2HK. That's the only difference here. This is 6 is for atrium and K is for ventricle. O2HK3JZ. And a little follow-up here. It is important to note that the pacemaker generator is placed in the subcutaneous tissue of the chest. The correct body system is subcutaneous tissue and fascia. A common error occurs when using the alphabetical index under insertion chest wall. This index entry directs the coder to table OWH8, which may appear to be correct until character 6 and the device. On this table, there's no device character to identify the dual chamber pacemaker. When using the tables in ICD-10 PCS, if the code seems almost right, review the table to ensure the rows of the table or even the table itself is correct. So just a good note. So that is coding a dual chamber cardiac pacemaker and leads. Thanks for watching.